Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to your digital open day here at the University of Leicester. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Welcome to the School of Criminology talk. So hopefully you've joined us because you are interested in studying criminology and potentially with us at the University of Leicester. So my name's Professor Lisa Smith. I am the head of school at the School of Criminology. So I'm really delighted to welcome you guys here and to tell you a little bit about our programs in the School of Criminology, what it's like to study criminology with us, and why we think the University of Leicester is a great place for you to study criminology. Also with us this evening, I've got Alberta, who's a current student with us in the school. So what we're going to do is I'm going to do a short presentation to welcome you to the school and tell you a little bit about our programs. And then there's going to be time for questions and answers at the end of the talk. And I can answer some of the questions. Some questions Alberta will be answering from a student perspective. So we do really welcome you to type any questions that you've got into the Q&A box on your screen. We've got a producer in the background who's going to be having a look at the questions and asking Alberto and I to address them at the end of the talk. But feel free to type any questions that come to mind while I'm talking. It won't interrupt me, but that way we can kick off with the Q&A at the end of the talk. So hopefully that sounds like a good plan. I'm going to get started. What I'm going to start with is just to tell you a little bit about the School of Criminology. So in particular, a little bit about our history, a little bit about league tables, and then kind of where we're located both physically on campus and also in terms of the structure of the university. So we've been at the University of Leicester, we've had a School of Criminology in some shape or form for over 30 years. So we've gone from being the Centre for Public Disorder to being a department, and now we're a school, but really those are just kind of semantics. Essentially, we've been teaching and researching criminology at Leicester for over 30 years. So we've got a lot of experience in the school, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about some of our staff that you would come across if you joined us in a few minutes, but we've got lots of experience of teaching and researching criminology at Leicester. In terms of league tables, we always do very well in the league tables. There's a quote here from the Guardian University Guide as one example, where we were ranked 7th in the UK in the 2023 Guardian University Guide. League tables are all a little bit different. So the Guardian League table is very focused on teaching and student experience. There are other league tables that we do equally well in that are more based on research, but I will talk about the link between teaching and research in the next slide. So hopefully that will become more clear. In terms of where we're located on the university, we've got a really prime location on our university campus, and I know this is a digital open day, so some of you, many of you may not have ever been to the University of Leicester campus, but the School of Criminology is located right at the heart of campus. So we're in the Fielding Johnson building, which is one of the main buildings on campus. In fact, if you can see me on your screen, the background that I've got uploaded behind me is in fact the Fielding Johnson building. So that's what it looks like. And this makes it's a really convenient location for students because we've got the library right next door. We're also next door to the School of Law, which if you're here because you're interested in the law with criminology programs, you will obviously spend a lot of time between the School of Law and the School of Criminology. The Student Union building is directly across the square from us, and all of your lecturing facilities are within a couple-minute walk from the Fielding Johnson building. So we have a really enviable spot right at the heart of campus, which we think you'll really enjoy. In our building in the Fielding Johnson, or in our school in the Fielding Johnson building, we've got a number of facilities for students. So we've got a student study space, which is a dedicated study space just for criminology students on the ground floor of the school. As I mentioned, we're located right next to the library. So of course, you know, students are welcome to work in the library, but we find that some of our students like that kind of quiet, dedicated study space on our ground floor. Just down the hall from that study space is our crime scene room. So we have a facility for teaching students how crimes are investigated. You'll see when we talk through some of the modules that you would take on our programs, there's a number of modules around criminal investigation and forensic science. So those modules use the crime scene room quite frequently. And all of your student support in the school is also located in our building. So our student support office, where your program administrators will be, and all your academic staff are in one location. So it's quite an exciting location right in the heart of campus. The last point I just wanted to tell you about in the school, I think is probably the most important point. So I'm just going to spend a minute explaining why I think this is important for you to know. So in the University of Leicester structure, the School of Criminology is a standalone school, which means that we're not part of the School of Law, we're not part of sociology. All we do in the school is criminology. And this is a really kind of unique selling point for the University of Leicester. There's very few universities around the country that have a School of Criminology that stands by itself. And I'm sure that many of you are visiting lots of different open days and you're considering other places that you might like to study criminology. And I would encourage you to just keep an eye when you visit places, keep an eye out for where in the university structure the criminology department sits. And the reason for this is because what you'll find is that criminology schools typically sit within another faculty, like law or sociology or social policy. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But what you will get in schools like that is you'll get a very focused criminology degree. So for example, if you are interested in a school of criminology that sits in a law school, what you'll find is that the faculty who teach criminology on that program will most likely have law backgrounds. So you'll get a very law-focused experience of studying criminology. Similarly, if it's sat in a sociology school, you'd be taught largely by sociologists. So that can give you a really interesting flavor for a criminology degree, and that might suit you really well. What you get at Leicester, because we don't sit in another school, is you get a faculty who are from all different backgrounds. We've got people who are, criminologists, but of course we've got sociologists, we've got people with legal backgrounds. I myself am a forensic psychologist. We have quite a few psychologists in the school. We have people who have social policy backgrounds. And so the flavor of our programs, as you'll see in a minute, is very multidisciplinary. So if what you're interested in is studying criminology from a really multidisciplinary perspective and taking all of those different kind of disciplines and using them to understand crime, then we think that being a standalone school is the best way to do that. So it's just a little tip as you're visiting other open days and considering where you might like to study, just keep an eye out for where various schools sit in their university structures, because that will give you a really good idea of the kind of criminology program that you would be studying. Hopefully that makes sense, but that is a really popular thing that on open days I pick up in the Q&A. So if you want me to explain that further, just ask in the Q&A and we can pick that up after. Okay, I just want to say a few things about research-inspired teaching. So at the University of Leicester, we're very proud to be an institution that's very research focused and very research active. And I think that from a teaching perspective, this is really important because it gives us the opportunity to have really world-class researchers delivering our modules. So if I was to kind of summarize the research that takes place in the School of Criminology here at Leicester, broadly all of our research falls into one of three, or well, one or two or three categories. So we've got people who study victims of crime, so people whose research are really focused on the experience of victims and improving the experience of victims of crime in the criminal justice system. We've got staff in the school whose research focuses more on the perpetrators of crime, so on offenders and perpetrators of different kinds of crime. And then we've got research that is focused on responses to crime. So what do we do as a society when crime occurs? So for example, should we punish or should we rehabilitate offenders? How does the prison system work? That kind of thing. So just to give you a couple of quick examples of these, and then we're going to move on to talk about the modules that you would study, and hopefully you'll be able to see the overlap between the research our staff does and the modules that they deliver. So if we think about victims of crime, we're the home of the Centre for Hate Studies here in the School of Criminology. And so, as you might guess from the name, the centre's focused on hate crime victimization and perpetration. So they conducted the largest study of hate crime victimization in England, and they have a really strong program, ongoing program of impact and training, for instance, for police forces in how to best provide services to victims of hate crime. We've got colleagues in the school that do research about various types of violence. So it could be sexual violence, it could be hate crime victimization again, and the violent impacts of that. We've got researchers who are interested in victimization in the context of migration. So migration and crime. So lots of different bits of research going on focusing on victims. If we move on to talk about perpetrators of crime, we've got a large number of staff in the school who do research on serial offenders. So these are perpetrators who commit many crimes, and in particular helping the police to link crimes together when a series of crimes have been perpetrated by the same person. We have a colleague who has carried out a Home Office funded project about perpetrators of acid attacks. So that was for the Home Office. We've got staff who do research on mental health services for young offenders, so focusing on young offenders and responses to young offenders of crime. And we've got researchers who work on desistance of crime. So you have some perpetrators who commit crimes when they're young, and then as they get older, they manage to stop committing crimes and become sort of contributing members of society. But you have other people who are career perpetrators, if you will, and they commit crimes throughout the entire life cycle. So lots of research about why some people stop committing crime and others don't. And then finally, if we look at responses to crime, we've got a lot of staff in the school who are focused on policing. So we have researchers looking at police culture and leadership. We've got researchers looking at comparative policing, so comparing police responses to crime, for example, between different countries, and police decision making. We've got experts in cybercrime, so how do we police and respond to crime that takes place online, for example. And then we've got researchers like myself who do research on forensic science and criminal investigation. So how do the police use physical sciences to help them fight crime? So that's just to give you a bit of a flavour of some of the research that takes place in the school. And we're going to move on now to look at our programmes. And you will hopefully see how a lot of the research that I've just briefly mentioned feeds into the teaching of our modules. So in terms of what you can study with us, we've got 2 undergraduate degrees in criminology. We have the BSc in criminology, and we have the BSc in criminology with forensic psychology. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to briefly talk through the structure of each of those programs. There's a little bit of overlap between the 2 programs, but you will see how the forensic psychology degree differs from the straight criminology in that it has obviously a lot more psychology core content in it. So let's start off with the BSc in criminology. So I realize that this might be quite small on your screen, particularly if you've joined us on a phone or a tablet, but the basic structure of both of our degree programs are that in your first year, you study core modules that run for the entire year long, so semester 1 and semester 2. And the reason why the first year is all core modules is that it gives you the kind of underpinnings, the basic kind of foundational knowledge that you need before you can start studying some of the more specific topics later on in the degree. So this is the BSc in criminology. So in year 1, you would study theories of crime, criminal justice in action, introduction to criminology, and victims of crime as your 4 core modules. And all 4 of those would run for the entire year. Then in year 2, you've got another core module called punishment and rehabilitation, which is another very important core subject in criminology. And you've got your 2 core research methods modules. So you've got understanding criminological research and doing criminological research. Now, I recognize that not everybody is massively enthusiastic about research methods. But the reason that research methods is core is because it becomes very important to have a good grounding in research methods for when you do your dissertation in year 3. The rest of year 2 is made up of option modules, which run 1 semester each. So basically what you do at year 2 is you pick 1 option module for each semester from the available options that are running that year. So the examples that are on your screen are the option modules that are running for next year. So in semester 1, you would choose Global Alternative Justice, Organised Crime, or Youth Crime and Justice. And in semester 2, you can choose from Criminology Goes to the Movies, Terrorism, Sex and Violence, and Criminal Investigation. So you choose 1 option each semester in year 2. And then in year 3, your core module is your dissertation, basically, which is broken down into 2 separate modules. In semester 1, you study preparing for your research project, and in semester 2 is when you actually do your dissertation or your research project. And that's supervised by an academic supervisor the whole way through. And I think that's the most exciting part of the course, because it's where you get to do a research project of your choice on something that you're hopefully really passionate about. Then the rest of your year 3 is made up of option modules again. So you would choose 2 option modules each semester. Semester 1, for example, you could choose from hate crime, violence, and gender and crime. And in semester 2, forensic science, drugs and crime, and criminal justice and mental disorder. So hopefully what you can see is that the basic structure of the BSc Criminology goes from that foundational year 1 where you take your 4 core modules, and then it starts to allow you to really tailor your degree to the types of modules that you're really interested in. And hopefully you can also see how some of that research I told you about in the previous slide feeds into the people who teach these modules. So you really are kind of getting a research inspired teaching experience throughout the degree. I'm going to move on and talk about the other program, the BSc Criminology with Forensic Psychology, which when I switch slides, you will notice that there is quite a lot of overlap, but I'll kind of highlight the differences for you if that's the program that you think you might be interested in. So this is the BSc Criminology with Forensic Psychology program. So very similar to the other program, you're going to start your first year with with 4 core kind of foundational modules. The difference, so in this program, you still do theories of crime, criminal justice in action, and victims of crime. The difference is that instead of introduction to criminology, the core module in year 1 is introduction to forensic psychology. So this is where you're getting that kind of foundation in the theories and principles of forensic psychology. Then in year 2, you do the punishment and rehabilitation core module, so the same core module as the previous program, and you also do research methods. So again, becomes very important when you come to do your dissertation. The main difference between the 2 programs in year 2 is that there are no optional modules in year 2 for this program, because you have to study investigative psychology in semester 1, and you do forensic psychology in the courtroom in semester 2. So in year 2, there's no option modules on this program because you need to be doing that psychology content in order to get the criminology with forensic psychology degree. Then in year 3, similar to the other program, you're going to do your dissertation. So you still do the preparing for your research project and the research project modules. You also do a core module in semester 1, which is using psychology in secure settings. And you do a core module in semester 2, which is criminal justice and mental disorder. And then you choose 1 option module in each semester. So in semester 1, you can do violence or gender and crime. And in semester 2, you can do drugs and crime or forensic science. So there's a little bit less optionality in the criminology with forensic psychology program. The reason being is that in order for it to qualify to be with forensic psychology, there is a need to do those core modules that are psychology focused. So if you're doing, for example, an A-level right now in psychology, and you know you really love the psychology stuff and you want to do, criminal forensic psychology as part of your criminology degree, then this degree program would be great. If you are interested in criminology much more generally and you want to have much more options to chop and change your module selections, then you might think that the BSc Criminology is the program for you. So that gives you a brief overview of the two programs, and all of this information is available on our website. So don't worry about trying to scribble down all the module names and everything. You can visit the website in your own time and all this information is there. So I'm going to move on now and just talk a little bit about how we teach and how we assess in criminology, and then I'll talk briefly about careers, and then we will have time for some questions. So in terms of the module teaching, what you can expect for each of your modules is roughly, some modules are taught in blocks of 3 hours and some have separate chunks of time for these activities. But what's common across all the modules is that you would have a 2-hour weekly lecture per module and a 1-hour small group workshop. So in your lectures, you'll be with the entire cohort who's taking that module. So you'll be in a big lecture theatre with the lecturer sort of teaching you the information that you need to know. And then for each module, you'll also have a small group teaching session. So a workshop or a seminar where you'll be in much smaller groups and you'll have the opportunity to discuss some of the topics that you've learned about in the lecture. There's also drop-in support sessions offered across the modules, particularly just before the assessment period, where we know that students need a bit of extra support for planning their essays or preparing for their assessments. So modules will offer drop-in sessions as well. When you come to study the dissertation, there's also a dissertation away day in the third year, which is where we take the entire cohort of students off campus for the day and provide lots of really interactive sessions about planning for your dissertation and how to deliver a really great dissertation. And then, of course, modules will have various field trips and guest lectures. It depends which option modules you choose, what combination of those sorts of activities you might get. But there's field trips and guest lectures across many of our modules. And in terms of your assessment, many of you might be pleased to hear that we don't have any exams on our criminology programs, simply because they're not the best way to assess how well you can kind of understand and debate and critically examine different kinds of issues in criminology. So instead of exams, our modules are based largely on written coursework. So that might be essays, it could be things like policy briefs or designing a campaign around something or poster presentations. And in some modules, there's also assessments that are based on individual or group presentation work. So it really depends a little bit on what modules you take, particularly across the option modules, how the assessment works, but there are no exams across any of our modules. And then on top of that, you would have personal tuition. So all of our students are assigned a personal tutor who works with you throughout your studies. They offer everything from general advice to pastoral support through to academic advice. As I mentioned, you've got your dissertation supervisor, so they're assigned to you during that third year to help you and guide you through the dissertation process. And then we have a student support desk as well, which is a weekly drop-in service in the school where you can pop by during the designated time and chat with academic staff about any academic queries you might have. So it could be that you're getting ready to write an essay and you want some advice on how to reference properly. You can pop into the support desk during those hours and get an instant answer to those kinds of questions. So those sorts of things, the personal tuition, supervision, student support desk, run across the entire academic year. So that's just a basic overview of what you would expect in terms of teaching and assessment. So one of the most popular things that people ask us, of course, at an open day is what kind of job can I get if I do a degree in criminology? And I think like any social science degree program, it's a great starting point for employment across a range of different sectors. But of course, people who are studying criminology do quite often think that they want to work in the criminal justice system specifically. So the most common roles that students are interested in are things like working for government, working for the police force, for prison and probation services, or in legal roles, in social research, community development, those types of fields. But we get students going on to work in all kinds of sectors. And in fact, things like the third sector, so the charity sector and NGOs, are becoming increasingly popular destinations for our students. And again, not even just in a criminal justice context, but in across all contexts. So like any social science degree, I think it's a degree program that sets you up with the skills you need to work in many different kinds of sectors. And I think in terms of preparing for your career and helping you, get ready for life beyond your degree program, this is something that we take really seriously at Leicester, and we get you engaged with right from the minute you join us all the way through until beyond your graduation. So what this is all about, what career development and career support at the university is all about, is really helping you as a student during your time with us and beyond to help you articulate the kinds of skills that you're getting while you're studying for a degree, beyond just knowing something about criminology, which you obviously will do after you finish studying criminology. But there's lots of other skills that you're going to be able to demonstrate throughout your degree program. Things like the ability to generate and evaluate evidence, to make reasoned arguments and ethical judgments, to develop and present cohesive arguments. You'll have researching and problem solving skills. You'll have writing skills. You'll be able to write clear and concise reports. You'll be able to work effectively in a team. You'll have experience of presenting. So lots of different skills that employers consider really important that you will be able to evidence by the end of your degree. So engaging with the career support that's available to you both through the School of Criminology and also through the kind of central university support out there is really important, and we really encourage our students to do that throughout the entire degree program. There's also lots of opportunity for you to engage with potential employers at the careers festivals. We have a massive alumni network of people in interesting jobs that we bring in to talk to our students and kind of inspire them to think about different sectors in terms of what they want to do after they graduate. And then we've got the Careers Hub, which is located on campus. And I mentioned already the student support desk in the school. We've started bringing in careers advisors to sit along that student support desk so that you can drop in and have a chat with somebody from the career service about whatever might be on your mind. It might be how to design a good CV, or you're getting ready for an interview. So you can drop in and have a chat with them in the school on a weekly basis. So I think I'm going to leave it at that because we're just about out of time, and I think now would be a good time to pause and see if there are any questions that have been put in the Q&A feature yet. If you haven't had a chance to type in your question yet, you can go ahead and do that now as well. And Dan, I don't know if we've had any questions come through yet.
Hi Lisa, we've had a couple of questions.
Brilliant.
The first question, and it's quite a popular one because a couple of people have asked here. So what can this course get me into forensics, has been one of the questions that's been asked, because people seem to be really interested in having a career in forensics.
I mean, it is a very interesting field. I'm a little bit biased because it's my own area of research. It's a very popular question, actually, at Open Days. What I would say is it depends what area of forensics you are interested in. So I think one of the things that's not very well understood about forensic science is that there's many different subdisciplines of forensic science that you can go into. So for example, if you want to be a DNA analyst who's analyzing DNA samples in a lab, you really do need to study biology or genetics rather than criminology, because you'll be working in a lab and you need those laboratory skills. Similarly, if you want to be a forensic chemist, what you really need to be looking for is chemistry degree programs. But what I would say is, and we've had students recently actually go into careers in crime scene investigation. So if you want to work for the police and you want to be, collecting and packaging and maintaining chain of custody of evidence from crime scenes, but not working in the lab setting, then absolutely criminology can get you a job in that sort of role. But if you're looking to be in a kind of lab analysis type job, you need to be looking at the physical sciences.
Thanks, Lisa. The next question we had was, what is the difference between a BA in criminology and a BSc in criminology?
Not a lot. So it's basically, it depends on the university structure, what the awarding of degrees looks like. So we used to have when we were Department of Criminology, our degree program used to be a BA, and now it's a BSc. But it's just the structure of the colleges and the university formatting. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. If you're looking at different programs and you're worried about this one's a BA and this one's a BSc, it depends just a lot on the individual university and the school.
Brilliant, thank you. A couple of other questions, and I don't know if it's worth bringing in Alberta here, because one of the questions is, what does a typical day look like for a criminology student at Leicester?
Yes, I can answer that for you. So with that one, I would say mostly criminology. When I'm doing my master's now. So when I was doing my undergraduate, I think we had 3 days lectures. So mostly, and it was mostly in the morning. So you didn't have like evening lectures. That was great. So you just get it done in the morning, and then we will have like a workshop after like lunch. So that would be around like 2 or 3 p.m. So that was like how it was for us. And I had a friendship group of 8. So what we used to do was during the break, so we would normally get like a 2 hours break between lectures and like workshop, and we will spend that in the library. So we will book a study room ahead of time, and you have to book ahead of time, otherwise it's not going to be there. So we will book a study room ahead of time, and we sort of spend our break in the library, sort of going through what we've done so far in the lecture, because what we used to do was listen to lecture recordings to make extra notes, so in terms of anything that we've missed during lecture. And after that we go to our workshop, and whenever it was like closer to assignments, we will sort of spend the night in the library. So we will do an all-nighter. So our day will sort of start off like calm, go to your lecture, we will relax during the break. So we won't do any work during the break, go to our workshop, probably go home, grab something to eat, and then come back around like 10 p.m. And then we spend the all night in the library, and then we leave around like 9 or 10 a.m. So that was literally like our typical day towards like assignment seasons.
That sounds very tiring, but really, exciting as well. So,
Oh yeah, it
that
was quite fun. We used to like bring snacks and food. We used to order in, because you can order to the library as well. So we used to order in. It was quite great. It wasn't really that much tiring.
brilliant. You've got a lot more energy than me, Alberta, but that sounds really cool. So thanks, Alberta. I've got another question that I might pose to Lisa, because we've had a few questions kind of about around careers in particular. Most popular is, what type of jobs can you get with a forensic psychology degree?
Yeah, good question. So a lot of the same career prospects are available regardless of which of the two programs you study. So I think it really, picking which program to study really, I think, depends mainly on what your main interest is, and particularly if you're doing, say, A levels at the minute, and maybe you're doing the psychology and the criminology A level, perhaps. If you realize that you really are interested in the psychological aspects of criminology, then the forensic psychology program might be a good choice for you. What I would say, because I'm always very clear about this when people ask about careers in the forensic psychology kind of world, is that the Criminology with Forensic Psychology BSc program that we run is not accredited by the British Psychological Society. The reason for that is, if you run a program, an undergraduate program that is accredited by the Psychological Society, they dictate the structure of that program. So you have to teach the modules that they prescribe. And what we wanted to design was a much more agile program, where we could offer option modules that are very relevant and very up to date and very kind of speaking to the sort of cutting edge issues in criminology and forensic psychology. So the only downside to not having an accredited undergraduate degree from a careers perspective is if you want to work as a psychologist in a prison. So if your dream job is to be a prison psychologist, then you really do have to study an undergraduate degree in straight psychology that is accredited. So not a criminology and psychology degree, but a standard BSc in BSc in psychology. You then have to go on and do a master's in psychology. That could be forensic psychology, but it has to be an accredited master's in psychology. And then you enter into the trainee program to become a prison psychologist. And that's the only way to get into that career, really. So if that's your dream career, then our criminology with forensic psychology program is probably not the option for you. You want to find an accredited straight psychology program to get started on that career path. But any other career path in the criminal justice sector that's based, that is psychology focused, it is absolutely fine. But the prison psychology route is a very specific kind of pathway to that career. So you need to be looking for like a straight psychology degree for that. I think the other thing is that a lot of students who are interested in criminology and in forensic psychology are interested in the police, working for the police. And I think some people are put off by the idea of becoming a police officer. So they want to work in a policing context, but they don't necessarily want to be a police officer on the beat, so to speak. And I think the other thing to bear in mind is that there's a whole world of careers out there in policing that are civilian jobs, for example. So one really popular route out of the forensic psychology degree program is things like crime analysts who work for the police, and they analyze behavioral data, looking for trends, looking for ways to link crimes to serial offenders, that kind of thing. They're not police officers, they're civilian members of the police force. So jobs like that, you'll learn about lots of those as you go through your criminology degree. And I think there's a lot more jobs out there in the sector than people realize. They think policing is just becoming a police officer, but there's actually a whole world of careers in policing that are not that route. So I don't know if anybody's typed any more specific careers questions in the Q&A, like about particular careers, but hopefully that answers the questions.
The last part of your answer leads really well into a slightly more specific question on careers, and that is somebody's asked that they'd like to be a police officer, but they do psychology and sociology at A-level. They like the psychology side, but not really the sociology. So is this the right sort of course for them, or is it too sociological?
So you said they like the psychology bit.
That's correct. So yeah, so that's what this particular person said. They really like the psychology bit, but they're not so interested in the sociology.
Okay. So the forensic psychology, the criminology with forensic psychology, as you saw from the slides, has got a lot of psychology content in it. So it's criminology, but from a very psychology kind of focused lens. So if you're enjoying the psychology A level, that might be a really interesting program for you. If you're thinking about the BSc in criminology, you will have noticed from the slides that there's still quite a lot of psychology options in there for you to take. There's always going to be some sociology in a criminology degree because you have to study crime from a kind of social perspective, but there's no kind of hardcore sociology modules, if that makes sense. So a lot of the modules will have some sociological theory in them, some sociological kind of perspectives and analysis, but we don't have any kind of like hardcore sociology modules. What I would say though is if you recall at the start of the talk, I was talking about being a standalone school of criminology. So to that person who put that question in the chat, I would say to you that when you're looking at different criminology departments, keep an eye on which ones are based in schools of sociology, because if you're not massively enjoying your sociology stuff, you're going to get a lot of sociology content in that kind of criminology program, if that makes sense. So just keep an eye on that when you're looking around, I think.
Thanks, Lisa. That's some really good advice. I'm going to bring Alberta in as back in, if that's okay, because we've had a question. It says not really about the course itself, but what's the social life like at Leicester, and how did you find making friends during your undergraduate degree?
Okay, so in terms of making friends, it was quite sort of easy for me because we had a knowledge test, and somehow we all found ourselves I was living in Opal Court, and I had 5 people that were living in Opal Court I saw that was on the course. So we were doing in the common room, and somehow we were like, oh, are you doing the same thing? Are we doing the same thing? And we all sort of sat together and ended up doing the test together. And that's how we sort of became friends. And there was a event that evening as well. So we all agreed that should we go together, and then we went together. So that's how, in terms of like my friendship group, and we stayed, the 8 of us stayed friends. We went out, we did outside social stuff together. We did studying together throughout the whole 3 years. Even with the COVID, we still kept in contact with each other. And now in masters, there's 3 of us still doing our masters, but we still have, still keep in contact with the other ones that are not here at the moment. So it was sort of easy in terms of making friends. However, one thing I will say is there's lots of societies that I will advise joining. I was part of the Ghanaian society, so I got to meet people just like myself who were able to speak Ghanaian just like me. So it was quite fun. There was events that we were doing that was quite small in group size, so you get to really get to know people. So that was quite great. And they had like events in the uni as well. Student union had loads of events that I would say go into. In terms of like outside like events, I won't really advise that in terms of making friends, because everyone is not at that moment, they're not in the right space to be making friends. Everyone just wants to have fun. But in terms of really getting to know people and see who you sort of vibe with, I would say do join the societies. There's also a criminology society, so that would be great in terms of making friends on your course, because that is so important when it comes to doing assignments, doing like, in terms of reading. If you don't understand anything, in terms of ideas, bouncing off ideas with your friends is quite great to get your essay flowing, essay going. So yeah, I would say these things are the one thing that I would definitely say you do. So joining, the societies here at University of Leicester, and there's loads. I think on top of my head, I can say there's about 20. So there is loads to like sort of look through to get to know. And during your freshers week, do attend the events, especially like the student union ones. Do go, any handouts that you get around the campus, do take them, read through, and attend whichever you feel like, is sort of in your vibe, basically in your life. So yeah, definitely do get involved.
Thanks, Alberta. I think that really highlights, what a big and vibrant community we have at Leicester, and lots of opportunities for people with lots of different interests. So thank you for that. I've got another couple of questions before we finish, Lisa. And the first question I've got here is, in terms of the entry requirements, which I have popped into the chat, which are available online, and I put the link there to the criminology course, which shows some of the more detailed entry requirements. But typically we know that it's ABB, but somebody has asked, is there any leniency around that?
It's difficult to say, because the leniency really comes in clearing. So what will happen is, if you apply to Leicester, you'll get an offer that is conditional on you obtaining ABB or better. So basically, if you're not too far off of ABB from a predicted grades point of view, you'll get a conditional offer. And then if you get ABB or the equivalent or better, you will then have a place on the course. So you will have met the conditions of your offer. If you don't get the conditions of your offer, then you need to go into the process in clearing. And the reason I say it's really hard to say is that it's a very popular program. Both of them are very popular. And so we typically don't go into clearing for very long before we're full. So my best advice would be, and this is kind of obvious, but try your very best to meet the conditions of your offer, because that guarantees you a place on the course. Outside of that, you then have to go into the clearing process, and I can't make any guarantees on how many students we might take in clearing over the next couple of years, because like I say, we are quite often almost very full going into clearing. So yeah, just try your best to get the offer conditions.
Thanks, Lisa. A couple more questions. So if you wanted to do policing at the end of university, what is the benefit of joining with a degree from University of Leicester rather than getting a policing degree through the police force themselves?
Well, I mean, either way is obviously a route into policing. So you're not going to make a wrong decision there. I think the main difference that you will realize from, say, doing our BSc in criminology is you will get a much more well-rounded degree program. So it's not going to be focused exclusively on policing, but it'll be focused on the entire criminal justice process. And what that does give you is a really good awareness of where policing fits in a much bigger system. So if you take a degree program that's very focused on policing, you will learn a lot about how to be a police officer. You will learn less about how it fits in the massive structure that is the criminal justice system. So I think it's a more academic degree program than your typical policing kind of direct entry sort of degree program. And yeah, you'll study a lot more a lot wider variety of modules. So it depends what you're after. I mean, if you just want to study policing and go straight into that, that's fine too. But I think that's what would be different about our program.
Brilliant, thanks, Lisa. And then finally, the final question that we've had, again, it's a lot about careers today. So is this course good for getting a career in forensic medical examining?
No, I'm afraid. Forensic medical examining. So forensic medical examining, you need a medical degree to start with. And then you would, I don't know the exact route, but then you would specialize in, pathology and things like that. So that's quite a long journey, and it starts with a medical degree, I'm afraid. So yeah, so that's where you want to go with that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lisa. I think it's time to wrap up now. So I don't know if you had anything to finish on, and I've popped some links into the chat for people to go and follow on. So there are a lot of questions that were relatively similar about entry requirements. So I've just asked people to go and check out what's on the website in terms of entry requirements, and hopefully that's answered their questions. But if there's anything you want to finish on, Lisa.
The only thing I would say just about the entry requirements theme is we do accept all kinds of different combinations of qualifications. We have a lot of students who come to us with BTEC qualifications, and so the equivalent entry requirements for the BTECs is DDM. So yeah, do have a look, because especially if you're doing a mix of qualifications, it's really the UCAS tariff point that's important at the end of the day. So yeah, the other thing I would say is, pop on the website. All the information I've presented today is on the web pages, and our contact details are all on there as well. And we're very happy to hear from people by email or whatever afterwards.
Fantastic. I think that's it for today. So thanks everyone for joining us. We hope you found this session really helpful and informative. And if you have any questions, as Lisa said, then do head over to our undergraduate courses page and email Criminology as well, who'll be able to answer any questions. But thanks very much.
Thank you.